Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth meeting of the quarter. Dara is going to be going over hair simulation, so feel free to take it away, Dara.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to share my screen this time.
Oh, yeah.
So this better work. It's working, right?
Working for me.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about kind of like an introduction to hair simulation in Maya. I haven't really worked with Houdini, so can't really talk about that, but I can talk about Maya. So as for like the overall pipeline of like simulation, character effects tends to happen like after animation and before rendering because a lot of the time the effects are dependent on how the animation moves. So of course you can set up your hair groom at any point, but the simulation portion will end up happening after animation, typically when it's finalized. And in relation to rigging, you generally don't really put XGen onto the rigs because it's not really stable. Um, and you can have trouble with referencing and namespaces. So you could end up just like modeling some proxy hair for the rig and load XGen after the animation is done. Um, I'm mainly going to be talking about simulation, but I thought I should talk about hair grooming a little bit. So the general idea is that when you're creating a hair groom, you're gonna need like a base object that's used for your groom, which is kind of known as your scalp. You're never gonna work directly off of the model. It'll be on like a scalp, and that's typically made by duplicating your base mesh and selecting the faces you want for the hair to be grown, and the scalp will be in the same exact location as your head, so you're not going to move that scalp at all. And when you're ready to start working on it, you have to double check the UVs and make sure everything is good because with grooming, you work with a lot of maps and painting. So since we're talking about Maya, you're going to be using XGen in Maya. So you could be using like the XGen window or the interactive XGen window to create your hair groom. And so XGen uses curves as a base for the hair. So you can start from scratch through the interactive XGen window or create primitives that can be turned into curves, which will be used for grooming. And generally, your hair groom will consist of multiple hair descriptions, curve guides, and modifiers. Hair descriptions are essentially like a group or area of hair, and you can choose to break up your hair groom into multiple descriptions. Curve guides are what is going to drive the movement and flow of your hair and the styling, as well as your simulation. And then modifiers are essentially how you style the hair, and you'd end up using like clump, noise, and cut modifiers a lot. So here's kind of an example of like a hair groom that I did. Um, and you can see kind of like all the lines here. These are the guides, the curves. So and in this groom, I have multiple hair descriptions where I have one description being kind of like the top part of this head, and then another description being like the fade, this short hair fade. And then I have another description for any like flyaways. And within each of those descriptions, I have like multiple like modifiers to kind of help style this hair. So I have a lot of like clumping and noises and just like using all of those modifiers to kind of style and like um, kind of make the hair how I want it to look. And whenever you're making guides for your hair, like the length of your guide should be like the same length as your hair. So like these long guides are for like these longest strands of hair, while like in this fade you have like way shorter guides. That's particularly important for like simulation if you plan to use these set of guides for simulation. So, and then here's kind of like the final render of the groom that I did and the reference. that I used. Ta-da! So going into hair simulation, the main topic of today. So it's really easy to kind of set up dynamics on your hair groom. It's really a click of a button. So you can choose the guides that you made for your hair groom, like these guides, or have like a linear wire modifier to create a new set of guides that wouldn't affect your hair groom. So if you wanted a new set of guides that, because guides kind of shape how your hair looks and how, like, how you do your hair groom. So if you want another set of guides that would be used solely for simulation, you would have a linear wire modifier. So you can choose whatever set of guides that you want to drive that simulation, and then you would essentially go into the attribute editor of the guide modifier and make those guides dynamic. And so you would get an option box to, like, that makes these guides dynamic, and essentially you can kind of check all of these options, even this one. Like, it doesn't make a notable difference whether this second option, snap curve base to surface, is checked on or off. So it's kind of your choice, but you can kind of select all of these and hit apply and close. And of course, whenever you're working with XGen and simulation, save before you do something, save before you apply, because at this stage, it's possible that your file may crash. So with a click of a button, like, you have a simulation. So if it's successful, you should be able to hit play on playback and then see the guides move the hair. So like in this like little low res video that I have here, I like when you apply the simulation to your hair groom, you should be able to hit play and then things move, even if it's ugly like this. And whenever you're setting up your guides, you got to make sure that your CV count on your guides is enough to define their shape. Because if you have a low CV count, that could also result in like low quality simulation. You can always rebuild your curves and the number of CVs within XGen. So you have a simulation, but the default settings kind of suck. So you can start like tweaking your simulation. And like you can start messing around with these settings before putting the groom onto the animation. And that's kind of like my preferred workflow. I like to mess around with the simulation and make it look a little nicer before putting it directly onto the animation. And to go about doing that, you would first check the nucleus. You always end up wanting to change those initial settings. And generally with like the space scale of your scale attributes, which determines the relative space scale, because simulation works with objects at their like actual size units. So you're gonna want to tweak that to get it at like a proper scaling so that it moves in a way that's expected. You'll probably tweak your start frame of your time attributes if you want your simulation to start at a specific frame, and then also your substeps and max collision iterations. Substep is like the number of times the nucleus calculates per frame. So when you have like fast movement, you're gonna want to increase your substeps so that it calculates more, and like it helps with like collisions, and as well as like the max collision iterations. That's pretty much like the max number of like the iterations per simulation step. So it's more accurate when it's higher. And then after you check your nucleus settings, you can also check your N-rigid for collision settings on your scalp, and like your hair system for attributes on the simulation itself. And then like things that you would tweak on your hair system, like on the actual simulation, you would probably want, this is kind of like what it looks like in the attribute editor. You would want to check on self-collide. So like the hair follicles don't like penetrate through each other, and then you would kind of mess around with your collision attributes to see how they're colliding. And also generally with any type of simulation, you'll probably mess with a lot of the stretch resistance, compression resistance, and bend resistance. And then in particular to hair simulation, you'll definitely be messing with the salt curve attract attributes, which kind of determines where the simulation starts on the curve. So like if you don't want any simulation like from the roots of your hair, like you can kind of tweak the ramp of your start curve attracts to where your simulation is mainly in like the tips. So like here's like after some tweaking I made the hair like a lot more stiff. There's still like some movement in like the tips and everything, but it's relatively way more kind of stiff and stable. So next, like how do you get your hair groom onto your animation? Um, so to do that, I use a combination of wrap and blend shape deformers to attach the hair simulation onto the animation. First off, you do want to make sure that your animation is final and good to go. So that, because that's going to be like the final movement that determines how the simulation. And then secondly, you want to cache that animation. You don't want to look directly on that animation file. It's better if you just kind of cache it through Olympics and then import that Olympic in. And so to actually get your groom onto your animation, we use this wrap blend method, which we can demonstrate as well. But essentially you have like so you have your scalp with your XGen, and then you would also have a duplicate of that scalp without XGen, and that will be you would use a wrap deformer and wrap it to the model, the model that your hair groom sits on, the one without animation, and then your model with animation that's imported in would be blend shaped to the model without animation. And when you turn that blend shape on, the model without animation should be now sitting on top of the one with animation and would be moving exactly like the one with animation. It's getting really witty, but so then after that, your the sculpt without the XGen would be blend shape to the scalp with the hair groom on it. And then when you turn that blend shape on, it would be the hair groom would be transferred over to where the animation is. And that's essentially how you get your hair groom onto your animation. Again, this can be demonstrated in Maya like after this presentation. And from here, you can continue tweaking your simulation until it looks exactly how you need it to be. So when I was doing this, this is how my simulation had looked at first. Like it was very like kind of floppy and a little like it moved quite a bit for like the short hair, when like in general like short hair is just a little stiffer than that. So this was after like tweaking it quite a bit, and so it's a little bit stiffer but with some simulation more towards the tips. And then once you finish your simulation, once you have it to your liking, you can go ahead and cache out your simulation through the XGen interactive groom editor, and this will create an Olympic file. And then you can, once you have all of that, you can import your animation and simulation caches into a file where you can then set it up for lighting and rendering. And of course, don't render with XGen simulation directly in your file. You should cache out your simulation because it'll absolutely crash. And then this is kind of an example of like the hair simulation rendered. So yeah, that's it for my little lecture. Any questions or comments?
So if you had a situation where the animator was interacting with the hair, like if a character had a braid and the character were using their hands to interact with it, what sort of tools would you use to deal with a situation like that?
With a situation like that, like when you cash out your animation and then like input that in, you would make sure that you would make your like that model into like into a collider, and like so that way when like the hands collide into like the hair, um like it'll actually like interact and move the hair, and then you would kind of like tweak those settings accordingly, like that it actually looks good, at
And so
least.
would
Yeah.
that collision be happening on the guide curve level or on like the actual hair level?
um so it would like the collisions would be happening like it would pretty much be like touching the guides, and then the guides are what's driving like the hair.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right. So I can ask Brendan to demonstrate how to like get a simulation onto animation through like a really through the wrap blend method that I was talking about earlier in a really simple example.
Okie
So
dokie.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop sharing.
Okay, I'll start. Okay, there we go. Okay. Can you see Maya? And is it not funky?
It's good.
Okay, good. So Dara set up this file for me because I have never done hair sim. So, but yeah, as you can see in this scene, we have this ball that's moving. This is going to be in essence our animation. In this case, it is Dara just has keys on it. You would typically want it to just be an alembic before you would do this, but for this example, we should be fine. But on the other hand, so we have that, which is our animation reference mesh. Then we have our render mesh, which will be the kind of like the guide mesh for our hair. And then we have our scalp mesh for that, in which the XGen hair is actually emitting from. And then we duplicated the scalp to have this kind of the scalp reference mesh. I'm going to see if I can. Okay, get out of here. I think it's under generate, right?
Yes.
Yeah, interactive gear manager. There we go. So we're just gonna pull these out. I'm gonna drag it over here, just so we can see this. Then I'm going to go to. Let's see. I'm gonna go to the reference mesh. Oh, I should actually go to this and go to the shape editor real quick. So on the render mesh, we're going to just create a blend shape, and we're going to call it. I'm just going to call it like render mesh. Yes. We're going to select the animation, and then we're going to select the reference. Create, add selection as target, set it to 1. Well, actually, I'm just going to set it to 0 for now, just so we don't have anything funky going on first. Then go back to perspective. I'm going to move this over to the side just for now, so we have space. Then what we want to do is so now we have our blend shape created. When we set it to 1, the sphere here will go to the sphere here, and it will just follow its movements completely and match the animation. However, we have no way for the XGen scalp to actually follow it. So what we want to do next is click on our reference scalp, which has no connections to our hair sim, and we're going to go to deform wrap, and just make a basic wrap deformer on it. I don't use the wrap deformer very often, so I'm gonna double check to make sure I did the right thing here. Okay, I did. And now that we've done that, when we move the render mesh around, the reference scalp follows it like it's just skin to that geometry, and we can see that it creates like a base mesh here. Next, we're going to go back to the shape editor. Oh. Okay, and we're going to create a blend shape for the XGen scalp, and I'm just going to call it XGen scalp. Yes. Have it follow the reference the reference scalp, and we'll set that to 1. Then if I go into a side-by-side view, when I move the reference mesh, you can see that the hair now follows. Then once we go to the channel box and go to the render mesh BS, hit 1. And because this thing is operating in world space, we need to go and change its blend shape attribute from origin of local to origin of world, and now it just follows. So once we do that, we can now see that the hair is following it, and we just need to give it a few seconds to like properly calculate it. But that is essentially how you get your hair. That's essentially how you get it to follow. You just use 2 blend shapes and a wrap deformer. With 4 pieces of geometry. And in the case, Dara, should I also go through how to kind of like set this thing up for lighting or for lighting and rendering, or?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Share that juicy knowledge.
Okay. I'll share the thing you taught me yesterday.
My juicy knowledge.
Yeah.
Juice and knowledge combined into one thing, brought to you by the
Oh yeah.
That sounds like something that Powerade will make or whatever. It sounds like another obscure flavor they'll make. So
are you tired, boring, listless? Hop out at parties? Try juicy knowledge. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry, guys.
My juicy knowledge tastes like lime cucumber.
It sounds like the smart water that they released. So we'll want to get our animation into an alembic, and then we'll also want to cache out our hair. We're gonna cache out our animation first. In order to do that, I'm gonna just check my notes really quick. Okay, we need to go to the cache menu up here, and you'll have a Oh, I guess I don't think I have that plugin installed really quick. Hold on, I'm gonna install that stuff really quick. Let's see. It's taking a time to load. But yeah, I just didn't have the ABC stuff, the Alembic stuff loaded yet. So we're gonna go to, where is it? Cache, Alembic cache, and then we want to go to let's see, where is it? Then export Alembic, export selection to Alembic. We're going to just click that. Wait, not that. Export to Alembic cache, export selection to Alembic, click the box here. Let's see, there should be an option box here. Yeah. So I'm going to quickly share my screen on that portion. Okay, Alembic export. So you just see like the Alembic export screen, right? and it's working well.
Yes.
Dope.
Mm-hmm.
So for this box right here, you're gonna find the advanced options. We're going to want to click the checkbox for UV right, right face sets, and world space.
Mm-hmm.
So once we do that, we're gonna then we can just hit export selection. And we can just make an alembic somewhere. I'll just call this anim. So it's going to go through and make an alembic file for us there. And then after we do that, I'm going to reshare my screen. Okay. Afterwards, we're going to want to properly export our hair. So in order to do that, we'll click descriptions. And then there are 3 options in this list. There's a transfer preset and cache. We'll then go to cache and then export cache. And it just gives you like the basic browser window to like where you locate the folder and name it. So I'm just gonna name it hair and then it'll just run. And now it's exported. So in a new Maya scene, we can go to I'll just click don't save on this. We'll go, in order to import our hair, we'll go to descriptions again, cache, import cache, and then we can just click on the alembic that we just saved really quick. Okay, it's not working for me real quick, but we'll go to, and then for the geometry, we'll go to cache, alembic cache. It's at the top of the list, and then we'll go to import alembic. It's the 3rd item on the list. We'll just click on that, and then it'll give us like a list for anim. And the ball is there. I'm going to try and figure out what's going on with the hair. I might have exported it wrong. So I'm just going to go back and do that really quick. So yeah. See. So yeah, we'll want to do that. Define blend shape, and then ref to xgen to ref, blend shape, and then ref to render mesh form. Okay. That's fine, but I just did the blend shape wrong. So xgen, ref to xgen. Okay. There we go. Oh, where'd the hair go? Okay, we'll just get out of here. Okay, now it's following, and then this is going back here. Where's that blend shape? There it is. Okay, we're gonna try and actually cache this out right this time. So let's just see. Click on the X under descriptions, just cache. Click on it. Let's call this hair again. Okay. Let's just see if we can just re-import it. Okay. So there's definitely something going wrong on my end. Dara, do you possibly have an idea of what's going wrong here? Because it's just, I think I might have just exported it wrong because it is saying that's only 72 bytes. But yeah, you should just have to click on like the hair.
Did you even make the guide dynamic?
Did I make the guides dynamic?
Simulation? Yeah, did you put simulation on the hair at all?
Oh, how do you do that again really quick?
If you go to that guide modifier.
Guide modifier.
Yeah, so click on the guide under hair.
Where? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, and then on the side it says make guides dynamic. In the attribute editor.
Yeah, and then collide with mesh. Yeah. I'm gonna save before I do that. But
cool.
Yeah. All right, make guides dynamic, collide with mesh, apply and close. Okay, cool.
Cool.
Then yeah, we'll just go with that. We'll just go with this sim for now.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Then just click on hair and go to descriptions, cache, export cache, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's just see what happens when we import it. Still says it's 72 bytes and it's not working. So yeah, that's definitely a problem on my end. You just click on the hair, right?
Yeah.
Ah. Huh. Let's just try importing into a new scene. See what happens there. Okay, it's just so yeah, it's just not working on my end, but yeah,
incredible.
That's great. But that's essentially what should be happening. I'm just not doing it. I'm just probably not doing it right. But yeah. Are there other questions are there any other questions though that anyone would like to ask?
So pretty much you're using the blend shape or you're using a wrap deformer to attach the scalp to the head geo. How is that different from just binding the scalp geo to like a head joint or a head tip joint, I guess?
Dara, feel free to answer that since you're more knowledgeable on the subject.
Yeah, trying to remember why. I think just like with the nature of XGen being as like kind of glitchy as it is, I think like well, actually, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not really sure because I haven't really done it that way. I just have done it through like the wrap blend method, and I haven't personally checked to see like if skinning it is like just as like if it's more efficient or if it's buggy in a sense. I feel like it probably would be because I guess I wasn't taught to do that, but I don't know. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay.
Want to see what happens? I still have the file open. Okay. I'm just gonna see what happens. That sounds kind of fun. Let's see this. Let's just dead ass skin a joint to the actual XGen and see what happens. Working fine so far. So yeah, it's working like it works. It just might be a bit chuggy compared to like the wrap blend method. That's the only one that I'm kind of seeing because my laptop's kind of chugging.
Okay, so so pretty much doing so at least what you're observing here is that doing it the way that you're doing it currently makes it it slows it down.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like the only issue you could run into is that it might slow things down a bit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, or well, you could also run into the issue where like you know how like sometimes so you know how like sometimes you'll like be animating and you'll like move your FK controller like a little bit forward, and because of weird like gimbal situations it'll look like you'll be moving it just fine, but then suddenly your graph editor will show that you go from like 0 to like -180 in 2 axes, and then you're still at 0 another one because it'll just be funky that way.
Huh. Okay.
That seems like the one problem that could really come out of that, like that it might just actually, actually rotate that much, so it could be buggy in that way. But
I was just gonna mention that, like, I guess in my very, very, very small experience of working with HairSim, like, I never directly work with the rigs in the file. Like, I would always have to cache it out as Olympics, like the animation and stuff, because it's just a lot less heavier and just like, I guess it's more efficient of a pipeline to have it like to render out Olympics and stuff.
Okay.
So like working with Olympics, you're only working with geometry, and therefore you would have to work with like the deformers as opposed to like skinning to joint.
Okay, that makes sense. Because the reason I was asking was because I took the Hair and Cloth Sim at class over at Atlanta campus, and like they didn't teach us anything about using Olympic caches. So it's like kind of cool to see that this is something that might be a little bit less heavy, like help reduce some of the processing, I guess, processing power that's needed for it, or make sure that's not as slow as when because like we were using like fully rigged like like characters that we and then like skinning the scalp to the head and stuff like that. But it was, I mean, I know simulation takes a hot second anyways, but it was definitely a bit slow going.
Wow. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really
No. When I was taking this class here in Savannah, my like whole entire pipeline was kind of based around like just like caching everything out and using Olympics.
okay.
That like through this class, this was kind of like my first exposure to using like Olympic caches.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to see